présenté par Blackmagic Design, en partenariat avec Scalar.
On est au beau d'Autodesk avec Marc Hamaker qui va nous parler des nouveautés, plusieurs annonces au NAB cette année. Marc, big show, a lot of people, and great announcements. You've got like a couple products that are like being enhanced, a new version or new extension. So what are these products?
Yeah, we have a ton to talk about, so it's kind of hard to summarize, but let me think. I know you're going to want to hear about Flame.
Yeah.
So we have a new release of the entire Flame family. It's the 2017 Flame family release.
Okay, it's a family-wide new release.
Yeah, so you've got a new Flare, Flame Assist, Flame, Lustre, all of those coming out with new versions. What I think is a big story, it's not actually new at the show, but this is the first time we've gone really wide to talk about how accessible Flame is. Because in November, we made some changes to the way we sold Flame, meaning you don't have to buy hardware anymore. You can run it on the Mac. You can buy Flare and Flame Assist without owning a Flame.
Yeah.
And Flame is, as you know, $6,000 a year, $500 a month. So really, you know, it's a premium product. This is not meant to be cheap pricing, but what it means is accessible pricing for people who need the power of Flame, but felt locked out or limited by the requirement to buy hardware and some of the costs that were associated with it before. So we announced that in November of last year, but this is the first NAB, and we're going big with it.
Yeah, and you're showing all the versions, so you have the Linux version, you have the Mac version too.
Yeah, and that's really because we don't see a difference there. Like, there's certainly no functional difference or intentional difference. You will run into differences. You can max out a Linux box with a lot of graphics, horsepower that you may not be able to match in an off-the-shelf Mac, but we don't take features out or limit in any way. And that's about the flexibility, because we want people to say, hey, I'm going to go on set, I need something I can take an iMac because it's just a monitor and everything together, or I'm setting up a facility and going to bring clients in and I want that full Flame experience of what they've had a few years ago, so I'm going to put a Linux box with a lot of storage and a lot of graphics horsepower behind it. So that's the accessible option, but there are new features.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. What are they?
So one is a connected color workflow, and that's something I know you would like that, being a colorist yourself. What we're doing is we're taking the visual effects of Flame and Lustre, which we have already packaged together as Flame Premium, so our Flame Premium customers really like this. But what we're doing is we're trying to further connect that workflow so that there's less render out of this, load it into this, I made a change here, I've got to redo my color here. And the way it represents itself in this first step or first version or first move down that path is that you'll actually have a Lustre node in Flame that passes color grading information into the batch compositing environment. So either in Flame or Flare. Now you can't go in and access Flare controls from Flame, but that grade data is not lost. So if you're still doing effects, you can see it in context of that at whatever point in the timeline that Lustre node is there, which is great for colorists that want to kind of do a little work here, then some VFX, a little work here. You can also see the VFX.
So it's not passing, like you don't have to render back and forth, so the information like added in Lustre is now like copied or passed in Flame in that node?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Think of it as passing the grade into the batch. Okay. It brings the grade into the batch environment in a way that doesn't require rendering out all your elements and rebuilding in VFX or finishing VFX and then moving into the grading world. Okay. And I don't want to oversell it. It's not, I'm sure you would look at it and say, can it do this, this, and this? And I assure you our developers are looking at that. But this is something we really wanted to make sure we did, which is start to bring those worlds closer and closer together, because we've had that functionality in Flame Premium, but now we want to have that workflow at a level that hopefully nobody else can match.
Yeah. The cool thing is that the compositor can now go and do something before the grade that is in that node, and then after the grade in the same graph. So that's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and right now it's it's shot based, so we're looking at how we can expand it out. But I think it's the first step in that workflow. So we think people are going to like it. Like I said, especially those with Flame Premium already, they've been asking for this workflow, and we're trying to listen and deliver. Then the other thing I think is one of the coolest stories at the show is the camera effects in Flame. Now,
What is that? I'm curious.
exactly. So by the name, it's a little hard to tell. But what we did is we looked at some of the technology in our Stingray game engine, and they use screen space effects for ambient occlusion and motion blur and glows. And we realized we could take those as a matchbox shader into Flame, and we call them camera effects because you imagine them sort of sitting in front of your camera, and it sees that 3D world. So computationally heavy tasks like motion blur and ambient occlusion are now much more interactive inside of the Flame compositing world thanks to game engine technology. So it doesn't, the artist would never know it's using game engine technology other than the fact that it's very interactive. Plus we've worked to really enhance the ability of Action to deliver physically based rendering and things like this. So if you check out some of the demos here at the show, you'll see, we're not trying to replace Maya, but when you're coming down to the crunch and you're in Flame and you got to make it look as good as you can, we don't want you to have to compromise. So I think artists are going to really love the fact that they have this level of interactivity combined with these sophisticated effects without waiting 8 minutes a frame to render as you would in a 3D program or more per frame.
So, and the Matchbox engine is all powered by the GPU, right?
Yeah, there's GPU, for sure.
The Matchbox engine being a 3D environment, GLSL, the shading language, now we can take other 3D tools, including Stingray tools, and we're starting to port algorithms from there and putting them into this language.
Oh.
So it's taken a very simple tool that's able to grab all kinds of information and make new plugins without having to go through a lot of complex programming, because it's an open standard language that a lot of people are using. So,
you have an example for us?
Yeah. So I could show you something that I built earlier for to show off some of the tools. And so here we have a stage going that it's part of a sports promo, and I have kind of everything turned on right now, but we'll go through and take a look at it. But the quality that it's giving me is taking me from maybe a simple stage where we have some nice details. This is using some of Action's current quality, and by enabling some of these effects, you can see right away we're getting these real-time reflections and blooms and glints and glows. All these things are happening in 3D space, and they're all using Stingray technology. So what we did is we took these game engine camera effects and we put them into Matchbox. And now instead of just putting it as a filter on your image, we're taking them and attaching them to the camera itself. So that's why we call it camera effects. Right.
Do you have its own environment, the own Matchbox environment, node environment, or it's part of? Is that part of Batch?
So Matchbox exists in Batch.
Okay.
It also exists in Action.
Okay.
Yeah. So the same nodes work in both places. And in Action, when you apply them to an object, then they become a texture object.
Okay.
So it's actually modifying the 2D surface, the UV coordinates of the surface. When you apply them to the camera, it becomes essentially, if you imagine like a filter lens in front of your camera. So it's doing things, it's operating at that level. So you have your image created and it comes to the camera's adding to it. But because it's math, it's in the computer, we can do some things you can't do optically. One of them being the reflections, which you see right here, if I turn them on and off, all it's doing, it's like shooting back. So we get the image from the camera, it's looking back at the image and saying, all right, I know I see the screen, I know there's a surface, it would reflect it, so it's automatically doing the math to transform the image and make it look realistic. So when I orbit the camera up or down, you see the perspective changes. And if you notice, if I zoom in a little bit on that detail, I have some displacement and normals on the surface, and they're actually bending the video that's being reflected through. It's a very nice effect. There's also some stuff going on here with the blooming on the little red rim lights going around. So if I turn one of those off for a second, so you see it going up and down. So if I modify these settings, one of the cool things about this bloom effect is because it's, again, on the camera, it's not being applied in 2 dimensions at the end. So I'm not just, filtering the red outs. I'm actually using a 3-dimensional volume to define where I want it to glow. So if I go into my selective mode, we can do a selective viewing mode, and you can see this magenta area that we're looking at. I actually can control the height of it, so I can, and where it positions in 3D space. So I'm actually defining, this is essentially a cube cross-section of my image in 3D space. I could attach it to the camera and say, oh, it's only from the camera. I could do things like look at the normals and get, for example, if I switch cube world here to normals, I can literally go X, Y, Z and say if things are facing an X, they get reflected and facing and why not. So you can imagine if we had a round object, instead we would actually, you can actually see here. So as you go around the curve, you're getting like almost like a Fresnel effect, which is pretty amazing to do that type right in action. Yeah. So we're not going out to Maya or doing any 3D rendering and any other tool. We're doing it right in our compositing environment. So let me go back to this cube space, cube world, and we'll turn that off again. And you notice if I'm going to take that same Stingray node, Bloom, I'm going to duplicate it, attach it to my camera. So you see it's doubled up there, right? So instead of creating a new one, I can actually take something that I've already defined, and then when I just start sliding it up through the image, you can see it's almost like a scan line effect because it's trying to glow everything as it goes. And when I get to the very top, my lights light up. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
And so when I orbit around, now we've got this great glowy effect. We're using the raise node on our spotlights so that when I orbit around, not only can I see my spotlight being casted, but you can see them in 3D space. So again, all of this virtually almost real time. I'm able to navigate with no hesitation.
So much efficient than drawing a mask and saying, oh, that's the position I want. Oh, but I'm going to move the stage. Oh, and got to draw the mask again. Oh.
Yeah. And so, flame artists are famous for like taking a little bit of stuff and just putting all this love and magic into it to make it great. And they've done great things with 3D elements before, but we never were able to achieve this level of quality that with this new camera effects tool. The camera effects tool has literally not just a small improvement, it's been a dramatic improvement. This is something, not only great for us, but it's kind of unique in this industry. So we're really excited about it.
So that's kind of the big news for Flame. There's a ton of usability features and other things in there. But the other product news I wanted to get to, which I think people are also really going to like, is the motion graphics tools inside of Maya.
Yes.
And this is something we've been working on for a while. It's been no secret, I think, that we've been looking at how can we add this functionality. So at SIGGRAPH last year, we added a new text tool, which was great. Maya needed a new text tool. We added an SVG import workflow that basically allows you to cut and paste vector graphics out of Illustrator right into Maya and extrude them. And then we did a kind of quiet acquisition of a technology. It was a plugin called Mash last year. Okay. And we didn't make a big deal about it, but what we've been doing is slowly integrating that into the core of Maya. And what's cool is all this comes together as what I think is a kick-ass motion graphics tool set backed up by the power of Maya. So like if you just do 3D text and flying graphics, you can do that like simple day-to-day motion graphic stuff, but you also have the fluid simulations, character tools, all the depth of the Maya tool set behind it. And this has been great. People tell us, well, I can do motion graphics and I can do 3D motion graphics, but sometimes I hit a wall. Or they look at Maya and say, gosh, I'd like to have that kind of Bifrost fluid effect or something, but Maya sucks at motion graphics. So now we've kind of said, well, let's deliver on that. So you're going to have motion we say it's motion graphics and a whole lot more, meaning it's all the other stuff Maya can do. So we're pretty excited about that. There's also, for Maya artists that aren't necessarily interested in that, there are some functionality, just you can use it anywhere. The motion graphics, the Mash toolset integration is great all over the software. But also, we've added some character creation tools that are great. Some new rigging, the quick rig. Some of this was in Maya LT that people saw earlier this year. The shape deformation animation, so you can kind of sculpt muscles or shapes on characters and quickly animate that. Just things that quickly streamline the animation process. We also replaced the render layer workflow with something that needed updating, and artists are really happy with that one as well. So performance increases, lots of good stuff in Maya.
And you have your new render engine too that you've integrated with that?
Acquisition.
Yes.
Yes, but that we were just announcing that Autodesk has acquired Solid Angle, which is they make the Arnold engine. Arnold. Yeah, but we're not there's no integration or anything yet. Really, at this point, nothing changes. We've just announced the acquisition. I think if you look at, we acquired Shotgun, a couple years ago. Yeah. We've taken that we've taken a very deliberate approach to Shotgun, meaning we didn't take the Shotgun name away, we didn't slap Autodesk all over it, because that product works with a lot of other software. So, the Foundry users use Shotgun. There are people that don't have another Autodesk tool in their workflow and might have Shotgun integrated. And we didn't want that to change. So Shotgun is kind of maintained its same way of working and all of that, while behind the scenes being integrated into Autodesk, and we help them with scaling their business. We help with support and other things, but not changing the experience.
Because I remember like two years ago, they were in that little booth at one table, like down the South Hall.
Yeah.
And now I saw the guys presenting on the big screen. So cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of amplifying that and helping get that out there, because that's something. Everybody has challenges around review and production management and making their pipeline more efficient, but they may, but they don't have to be they don't have to be using Maya to do it. And then I think if you look at solid angle, we're going to take that slow too. So today nothing changes. You still go to their website to get information. You still buy from the same people. But what it means behind the scenes for Autodesk is that we now have an incredible team of rendering people working with us. So while they'll continue to support Arnold in the products it's currently in, Cinema 4D, Houdini, Maya, they may look at other products in the Autodesk line to add it to, and they may look at other products outside of that too, and then they may help us with completely different problems that rendering brings to the table, like the game engine helping Flame be more interactive. So it's just an exciting time, and I think there's so much good news this year at the NAB. It's hard to cover it all.
And but with the Arnold, weren't you afraid that other like render engine would create a feud between you and other like?
I think we're remaining open to other renderers too. So you'll still be able to use Max and Maya with, whether it's Mental Ray or V-Ray or whatever renderer you choose. So in the same way, we're not going to stop others from using Arnold. No. We don't want to stop our artists using Max or Maya from using any other renderer, because it's just good for everybody. Now, what is interesting with Arnold is that we're also starting to look at how we can offer solutions like cloud rendering. So we've teamed up with Google to offer rendering through the Zinc plugin on the Google Cloud platform, which is difficult, it's a mouthful. So, and that's just a way, that's Google doing that, but we've worked with them to help them have a licensed version of Maya or a licensing system with Maya that works. They're able to deploy that on the cloud in a way that's efficient across all those cloud virtual machines and rendering cores. And that's something that we're excited about, because it starts to take it helps our customers using Maya today to be able to send their data up and have X thousand number of cores rendering their project based on what their needs are. And talk about openness, you could do that with V-Ray or RenderMan now. So I think the world's becoming more open and less about being proprietary and locking people into a certain ecosystem or workflow. It's more about enabling.
And we see you going that way, and that's good. Yeah, it is.